Roll call.
Commissioner Roby?
I'm here.
Commissioner Gillespie?
Here.
Commissioner Lustolo? She is not in attendance.
I
Joyce
think
is
we
going
have
to
a
be taking
new
over.
member, yeah.
Joyce Overton, but the Mayor Select Committee needs to officially appoint, but she's going to be here probably from now on.
So John, should I vote today then?
Yes, yeah, for today you should. Okay. Stacy Mattina.
Here.
Commissioner Mattina, I'm sorry, Chair. Commissioner Mills. Commissioner Farrington. By the way, the Board of Supervisors appointed Tony as the alternate, their regular member in place of Denise Rush. He's not here. Commissioner Comstock.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Jeff was not going to be here.
Okay, Commissioner Shield.
Present.
Commissioner Abel.
There.
And Commissioner Lyon.
There.
Okay. And then staff.
Okay, approval of minutes for the December 18, 2014 meeting. Everyone a chance to review those? There's no friends. We'll take a motion.
If there are no questions, Madam Chair, I move approve as submitted. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. At this time, we'll take a public comment for anything not on the agenda. Is there anyone that wants to come up? Okay, we'll move forward with the consent agenda. Review and authorize payment of expenses for December 2014.
Unless there's any discussion, I'd move approval of the paying the bills.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have a public hearing on a preliminary draft of the City of Clearlake service review and spirit of influence. An overview of the process leading to adoption of the MSR and SOI for the City of Clearlake. We have copies of the preliminary draft City of Clearlake service review and sphere of influence in front of you.
Thank you. I handed out copies of the draft MSR, and I have to keep a couple copies for Tony and for Jeff. So we have a tradition in LAFCo is that we spell the person's name wrong the first time it's on the agenda. So I will give a copy of both to Commissioner Comstock.
I'll get them to
both of them. What you have is a preliminary draft of Clearlake sphere of influence. The reason it's preliminary is that there's a few things that we need to finish up, as well as there's some important things that the city needs to finish up, and that's the general plan. We cannot adopt a sphere of influence without an environmental document with which to rely upon. The tentative recommendation is that the sphere of influence would be the same as the city's boundary. What I'm finding in going through this is that these things, they get out of date pretty soon. You notice on the budget figures, 2014-15 recommended. I don't believe there's a lot of differences, but I'll have to get that confirmed by Joan, and I'll be meeting with Joan over there probably within the next month or so to go through some fundamental questions I have regarding some financing. And I have a few other issues that I need to address, and I thought it would be totally unfair to you to give you this email to you about 3 or 4 days ago and say, well, we're going to discuss this in depth at the commission meeting. I would recommend that that the review draft that we can, we're going to have a discussion of that, not at the March meeting, but the May meeting. I think it's, let's see, this is January, February, March. Not at that meeting, April, May, at the May meeting, because that that'll be back in Clearlake.
Be here.
And so I don't want to be discussing the Clearlake MSR in Lake Fork, and we'll do the fire next week. So, or next month, next meeting. So, That's really my introductory comments that I do have. What I would ask is that within a month, if you have any comments on the MSR, that includes Mike and Jerry and everybody else out there, that to please email me and give me your comments, because I can't address them if I don't know what they are. And so you probably will have comments. It's 124 pages. So there are, I'm expecting comments. With respect to the general plan, I will wait till I get pretty much a final copy before I do a section, a more expanded section on planning, because, and some of the general plan policies will affect other parts of the MSR, but I'm at a loss right now without those. So at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to you. If you can, by say the end of February, provide me some comments on this preliminary draft. And the general plan, what is the status of that, Joan? Go ahead.
Good morning, members of LAFCo. Joan Phillippe, City Manager, City of Clearlake. The general plan draft is completed. The EIR draft is completed. We have, I had hoped actually we would be before the Planning Commission this month. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. We're probably going to bump into March. We had some consistency questions that we're working out with Cal Poly now. I think you're all aware that Cal Poly is preparing those documents, or has prepared those documents. So as soon as we finalize that discussion, it will go to the Planning Commission for additional public hearing, review, and recommendation onto the council. So we're anticipating that it'll be before the council in April, maybe May. So we're very close to concluding that project.
Okay, yeah, so our next meeting that we'll be discussing this will be May 20th. So by then I should have the final EIR, at least with all the comments, because that's what I'm waiting for. Is I know that on the draft EIR, for example, the Sierra Club wrote a letter. I just want to know how the responses are to that, and several. I think I wrote a letter also, what the responses are in the final EIR before I finish anything here.
Any questions?
Thank you.
So John, are we actually opening a public hearing today?
No, this is not a public hearing. This is just a discussion of the draft, and there could be members of the public that may wish to make some comments. Or, what we tried to do is I tried to look at things like water, sewer, and fire, because those three those three services are not provided by the city, but yet what LAFCo does and what Lake County Fire does affects growth within the city. So there is some discussion of that, and the water companies.
And all of the water companies.
Yeah, there's 4 water companies that, Lower Lake has a little bit north of Cache Creek, which is in the city, which nobody seems to ever. I figured it out when I did the map. MSR. Yes, there's a little finger there's a mobile home park, about 30 or 40 units.
Which one?
Oh, I don't know the name of the mobile home.
But it's north of the creek.
It's north of the creek.
Okay, I do know which one. We're both.
Yeah, I just don't know the name of it.
There's only one there.
There's only one there.
A portion of that, a mobile home park, or all of it, is in the Lower Lake Water District. That was one of the things I wanted to clean up in this draft. Is the table, we talked about there was a table with the water districts, but the comparison table needs to be more toothed up, and it needs to be parallel to the other. So I've got an apples and apples comparison, because right now I think the comparison on services is apples and oranges. And it's hard to make a comparison between, say, like the Golden State Water Company in Lucerne, to make a comparison to that Clearlake, because they have different problems in these areas. But it would be interesting to see what could happen in some of these areas. What I'll try to do is I'll try to compare it with some more lake. I don't have Lake Fork's example, and I'm going to include Lake Fork, so that we've got a rough parallel of how services cost here vis-a-vis other areas. But knowing there are so many variables that why service is higher, especially wastewater service could be the type of thing. Could be many issues with wastewater that you don't see when you see a actual rate. So.
Okay, so commissioners, questions? I know Ed has a question.
Yeah. When it comes to water companies, I know that LAFCo has within our purview water districts, but in Clearlake, let's just skip the Lower Lake Water District for a second.
Okay.
The three water companies that are predominant in Clearlake, one of them is a water district, the Canoctown County Water District. One of them is a privately owned water company, very similar to the one in Lucerne. And the other one is a mutual water company where each person that has a meter has a share of stock. That's the Highlands Water Company. So, I don't think all three of these water companies are within our jurisdiction. Am I wrong?
You're correct. They're not all within our jurisdiction. You can ask for information from them, and we have to provide it now.
Okay.
Whether or not they do is another story, but you know, what information would we possibly need? I don't know.
All I'm saying is that this may complicate things a little bit in the Clearlake MSR.
I think it complicates things also with further general plan and development potential in the city.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Well, they all get water from Clearlake. So that's another issue is what is their agreements from Yellow Flood, because they may need to change some of those. And that's one thing I haven't looked at yet. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioners? Anyone from the public want to make a comment? Mike?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Mike Dunlap, for the record. Seeing as we have two representatives from the city here, I thought I would take this opportunity to raise it. I will put it in written comments to you, John. On page 64 of the draft, it talks about enforceable obligations, Series A revenue bonds for the successor agency. And on the top of page 65 is the future debt service. The municipal service review, as I understand it, is a 5-year document. And in year 4 and 5, according to this table, the debt service goes from $852,000 a year to $4,258,000 a year. And my question to the city right now, today, would be, how is that going to get paid?
That's my question that I wanted to address with Joan later.
It's actually 4-year period. That $4,258,000 is for the year 2019 through 2023.
Right, 4 years.
That's on page 65.
You are correct.
That's not a per year?
No, they went ahead and stuck them in 4-year increments.
Those out years are 19 to 23, 24 to 28.
Yeah.
It's a range. It's still a jump, though. I'm sure Joan
Yeah.
will answer that for us later.
Yeah, I mean, it jumps to $1 million, more than $1 million.
Right. Goes from 800 to over $1 million. But
Yeah.
that will,
Okay.
the city will be addressing that.
I'm sure the city will address that later. Are there any other comments from the public?
Is this the only discussion you're planning on having, or John, are you going to go through the sections and kind of illuminate some of this for the commission?
Well, I can do that.
I mean, I don't know what the commission is.
This basically over the chapters, we have an introduction with the LAFCo overview, like we have in most service reviews. Some sphere of influence options that we have in various service reviews. And right now, at the point, without seeing the EIR and the general plan, it's more or less final form. The recommendation would be is that the coterminous with the city boundaries. The setting portion of this is basically going through some of the demographics and history and the services that are provided within the city and some of the services. The city actually provides some of the issues related to stormwater, flood control, surface water, and important issues, other natural hazards, and fire services. And so probably for some of these, we'll be asking City Public Works to look at these, as well as the Watershed Protection District. Part of this also is looking at the city's departments, and that's section 3. And so the planning function and some of the others will be affected by some of the general plan policies that are coming forth. And so maybe changes in planning and parks and a few other things there. The budget, we have up here at this point a preliminary, or the recommended 2015 and 14-15 budget. I want to get the permanent budget in. So I have a feeling there was very little change. So that's an easy edit. And we'll go with the service review with the findings that we need to make. There was a question about these service reviews are there was a question about the determinations with disadvantaged communities. LAFCo, we look at unincorporated communities and areas like that are so-called disadvantaged adopt. These are all incorporated, and they do meet the criteria that having an income of 80% of the state's median household income. So the city, if it were unincorporated, would be adopt, but I guess now it's an EIC. So it does meet the criteria. The importance there is for water. And it's an incorporated disadvantaged area. Then we go into the sphere of influence determinations, and some of these may change as a result of the city's general plan. And we've got some appendices here. As the grand jury looked at several issues in the city, so the grand jury reports here. There's some issues with taxation in the city. There's the police Measure P that was approved, and so there's financing where certain departments have more money than other departments because of Measure P. The grand jury went through the pretty comprehensively in 2010. Roads are, of course, an issue, the perennial issue in Clearlake. There's a section on the Lake Channel here that I'd like to have Ed look at in more detail, and a few others that are involved in the PEG TV station. There's been some changes recently with that. So that's like everything else here, it's a moving target. The last appendix deals with stormwater management and water quality monitoring. Remember we talked about PMDLs and these things in the last meeting. Okay, well, you know, let's do a discussion over it, because this is, Clearlake is one of the co-entities, and so that's an issue that I need to flesh out with Public Works. Actually, Public Works in the county and the city. So, and the rest of it, the map is not in color, but it's pretty. You can see where the city of Clearlake boundary is and the city of Clearlake sphere. Proposed at this point. It doesn't say the word proposed because I don't like that on any of my maps, but it is proposed. So that's an overview of the MSR. So I'm sure that a lot of you have some depth that I don't have, and when you look at this, you'll see things. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
And we all promised to read it by February.
Oh, I just put up February 30th, but we're not going to talk about it
Well,
until
if
March
we go by
meeting.
February 30th, that's never going to happen.
Good
What
job.
I will do is, I'll have a test at the next meeting in Lakeport, about 10 items about clear.
There you go.
Pop quiz was going to be on February 30th.
Pop quiz on March.
On my calendar, if I can find one.
Okay, any other questions up here? Public? Betsy?
Madam Chair, I beg your indulgence to read from my computer because I didn't have a printout of what I wrote to John this morning. On page 70, you have determinations under section 4.5.2. And in item 5-3, it reads, the City of Clearlake belongs to two joint powers authorities, which is a means for the city to share risk management efforts and abandoned vehicle abatement. I would like to add another item that reads 5-4, the city belongs to one joint powers authority for the purpose of flood control and water conservation services, because that is your joint powers authority with the county and the watershed protection district for stormwater management throughout the jurisdiction. And it isn't mentioned as a joint powers authority.
One of the things is I need to meet with Joan is about, are there any other JPAs out there? Yes,
That's crucial, because that goes to how you participate in that stormwater program with the watershed protection district.
right.
The second item is on page 71, and this is the item 6-1, which says the City of Clearlake website has been upgraded and includes all public information. Back when Doug Heron became part of the work group for public education and outreach, I worked with the cities and the county staff as well on the clean water program. He agreed that when the city website was up and running, that he would make room for and provide input to the city's stormwater management public information page, similar to what the city of Lakeport has. Because for people to provide stormwater complaints or spills or something like that, and also get access to what your program is. And that just hasn't happened yet. I realize, it's a really low-level item, but I'd like to just take advantage of the fact that Joan's here, just to say, this is something that we need to have on our work list, and it would be good to include maybe just a note that we need to expand that to comply with your permit. So, thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Anyone else? Come on up.
My name is Scott Little. I'm going to piggyback on Mike's question, and if the debt service goes from $800 to $1 million a year, will the Clear Lake be able to weather this? Is this the kind of thing that we can actually do, or is that like too much? And that's just my question.
Scott, what was your last name again? I didn't catch it.
No.
How do you spell that?
Nuttall.
Thank you.
So is that something we want to get into today, or are we going to look into that further later?
I have to meet with Joan about that. I can't answer that at this point.
Right.
If I may, I'd like to add one more comment, is I received this is about your stormwater program. I received an email just a little bit ago from Will Evans, who's the Lake County Department of Water Resources Program Coordinator, who coordinates the clean water program with all three co-permittees. And he said that there's quite a bit of dialogue going on with the Central Valley Water Quality Control Board and so forth. And they'll be bringing the work groups together shortly to address the new permit requirements. So the section in the MSR that describes the stormwater program, the flood control systems, the outdated storm drainage master plan, all that kind of stuff, that's the thing that we're particularly concerned about. And I just want to mention one thing to put in your mind when you're thinking about that. The original storm drainage master plan of the city was written in 1982, and in 1994 a consultant was hired to review it and they did, and so the references are to the 1994 version. In both cases, only one feature of the actual drainage plan was executed. The rest of the plan has not been done, which we're grateful for, because in the days when the original plan was written, the whole stormwater philosophy was different. Your idea was to move the water through, get it out of town, dump it in the lake as quickly as possible. In the last 10 years, the EPA and other state agency philosophies changed 180 degrees. You don't want to do that. You want to slow it down. You want to recharge your groundwater basins. You want to keep it in your stream beds and your habitats and your fire resilient landscaping. And so we're glad that that wasn't implemented, and we're glad that it wasn't done, but it is something that the city does really need to address. So thanks for letting me mention that.
Thank you, Betsy. So I think any other comments, if you want to email them into John before we meet on this again, it would be helpful. And the commission hasn't had a chance to read it yet, so we'll get to work on that. Anything else, John?
No, not on that. So.
Hey. Yep.
The folks, the gentleman that comment, and Mike, obviously, you know, we're not going to be able to answer those questions, but raising them, those will go back to the city, and then they'll get them back to us, because it's not, LAFCo is not going to solve that problem.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
My whole point is, you know, can the city meet this debt obligation? And if they cannot, or, you know, they forecast this as a significant hurdle, then you have something to do as the commission, because you're going to have to make some kind of recommendation as to what the city should do. After we get the answer to that.
After we get the answer to that.
I know. So, yeah, we were talking about that. I was being cynical again here. Disincorporation is an option. However, it will not solve that problem.
The debt won't go away.
Well, not solve that problem.
It won't go away. It's still there.
So yeah, the county is it's still there. I had that issue in Yuba County with the $2 million. If you're familiar with that district, $2 million debt. It's not going away. And so we're going to have
John, this is not the appropriate place for us to have this discussion, but you know, bankruptcy is different than disincorporation. You know, the city does have capital assets.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. That's a whole other story.
Well, on that positive note, why don't we move on
Thank you, Madam Chair.
to our next item. We have a draft outline for the Watershed Protection District Sphere of Influence review of the preliminary draft outline that we have been handed out. Do you need those?
Yeah, I handed out a blue sheet with, this is an initial look at the sphere of influence update. The 5 items you have on there are generic titles, I guess, for a sphere of influence update. The Watershed Protection District and the sphere update will go through the background, the sphere requirements, and the options. The options for the Watershed Protection District are many. I can't describe them all today, but you know, there's the leave it alone. And then there's the watersheds expand over the county lines. The other is that, well, they approved or the legislature approved this new bill that reconstituted the old flood control district. Should that have an effect on the district boundaries? What actually does the district do at this time? That's an effect. What area is affected by the NPDES permit is an issue. Are there parts of the county that the Watershed Protection District just does not active in, and with the new legislation, they shouldn't be involved in? And that's something that will need to be looked at. Again, the city's doing a general plan, and we'll have that by this happen, by this sphere report when it is done next year. And I want it done earlier possible, the earlier the possible, the better, because the facts change with the service review so quickly that I don't want to be redoing the service review. And so that's another thing we'll look at, is some gaps in the service review. Jim Steele brought up an issue, and we'll take a look at it at the last meeting on the service review. And we'll look at we talk about public facilities, present and future capacity. I think that can also mean, what's the capacity for the county to perform this? The human power, I guess, to actually do this, and what's happening. So some of these are a watershed protection district. You see these sphere requirements. We gotta kind of morph them to fit the watershed protection district. It's not like it's the Upper Lake Water District where you have a specific community of interest, as opposed to this is the whole portion of the county. We've got several communities, and so that's something that we'll need to look at through the process. And what should we focus on the Clear Lake watershed only? Those are some issues that we need to look at when we do the sphere update. And then the commission will be asked to make a decision on what the sphere should be. We've done, most of the spheres have been the same as the district boundaries. Some of them been less, such as Lake County Sanitation District is less than the district boundaries. And some have been more. So it just depends. We're not into it that far yet. But anyway, I just wanted to present an outline because this update's going to be in the next year's work program. So I wanted you to have a heads up.
So we just have one kind of generic question. If the decision was to pull the sphere in, then who would have the responsibility for what? I mean, I'm just wondering what that would look like.
And who should be providing the service?
I mean, if we said, no, we're not going to take it, it's like, who would?
Yeah, I don't know, it's something.
I mean, can we just say that? No, your turn.
Yeah, give it to the cities. I don't know.
Any other questions from the commissioners? No? Betsy?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Again, Mr. Evans, the program coordinator for the Clean Water Program in this, we have a statewide conference call coming up today that we're all talking to the TASCA subcommittee on stormwater about these issues. If you conceive, and the different staff people and I have been talking about this, if you conceive of a county service area being coincident with the community development boundary, which is defined in the county general plan, for drainage, roads, lighting, whatever different services are provided, and you make that your municipal storm sewer system service boundary, so it's just all the same, that we believe would be the boundary area that the state would like to see in terms of defining what we do with stormwater services. If you take the maximum sphere of influence out past those community development boundaries and of course the city lines, you reach a limit where there's federal lands. We don't have jurisdiction over the federal lands, even if they lie within the watershed for permitting. So that would give you basically 4 circles: the lake, the MS4 community development boundary, maintenance road area definition, a tax rate area, and then a sphere of influence for 5, 10, and 20-year growth, out to your maximum where the actual county services are going to be delivered. Because if you're going to deliver those in the public lands, that's something else. You have to have an interagency service agreement and cost sharing and all those kinds of things. So that's basically what we're thinking about as a rational way to set these lines for defining specific services, and then you can identify those costs within those boundaries, those limited boundaries. And look at, for example, the city has 15,000 people here. Their property taxes are also contributing to the flood control water conservation district, which is now the watershed protection district. If you looked at those services being delivered per capita or per tax rate or whatever it is, you might find that the city should have been getting flood control, stormwater deliveries, service deliveries here to help you to prevent the flooding that you've had. But you're not really doing that because everybody's kind of got to take it on their own shoulders. That's a shared cost at district. So that's the kind of things we're looking at to make it practical to understand the cost.
Well, this probably isn't the appropriate time or place, but I would just like to let Betsy know that I would love to debate this issue with you.
Oh, sure.
For example, you know, the watershed doesn't conform to any of the arbitrary human lines that we draw around sewer districts or community growth boundaries or any of that stuff. Watersheds are natural things that start at the top of the hills and run down to the sea. And if we forget about that and start saying, well, the city of Clearlake has 15,000 people and they're paying their taxes and so much per capita and it's not all going to the city, well, something's wrong. Anyway, we're missing out on the bigger picture, which is that if the city's having issues with water, the water's probably coming from outside the city limits and coming through the city, and watershed protection does involve going beyond the city limit boundaries. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff I would like to get into with you on this, because in my mind, we all need to remember what a watershed really is and how it's interrelated. And we have three major watersheds in Lake County. And a watershed is a life support system for all of the living things within it, including us.
So John, what is our timeline on completing this, and how are we going to go about doing it?
I'm going to put it into that we initiated the next budget year.
Okay.
And how are we going to go? Well, we're going to start with an outline, and we're going to go from there and present a draft or a preliminary draft, one or the other. We're going to have some discussions, and pretty much what we did with the Watershed Protection District MSR. Pretty much that process. We'll need to conduct a public hearing and at the end and adopt it. And then you'll be asked to make some determinations and decisions at some point, but we want to get some of the facts down first.
Okay, good. Jim?
I wouldn't want to put any words in Suzanne's mouth, but I think Ed answered pretty much what you were asking, weren't you? Because it isn't, the watershed is not a political boundary. It's no arbitrary line.
No.
It was created over millions of years of hydrology and geology.
Right, but I think that what all I'm looking at is who would do, no matter what happens, the watershed starts up here. If you say we're not taking care of that, we have to take care of this. And if this is draining into this, then who's taking care of that part that's upstream?
And maybe we want to take care of that.
Well,
maybe we want to make sure that whoever that is taking care of it.
Well, it might be a collaborative effort between more than one.
There's a thought.
Hold
that one.
The territorial
Comparative
is not going to solve it.
Good point. Anyone from the public? Betsy?
I'd just like to add one more comment. While the physical, geological, geographical terrain of the entire defined HU 180-20116, which is our USGS boundary for the watershed, is not a political unit, the taxpayers pay for services in defined political boundaries. That's why LAFCo exists. And I'm suggesting that we identify degrees or levels of service to focus on the immediate. You have to know what your tasks are and how to pare them down. We know we don't have the money to take care of the entire 820,000 acres. We know we have to take care of that surrounding drainage that goes to the lake that's inhabited and deal with those inhabitation problems. That's already being done in the city services. We need a slightly larger area where we can determine interagency agreements for the forestry, Bureau of Land Management, other groups of people to ensure that what comes into the lake is protected. The City of Los Angeles went to the U.S. Supreme Court to challenge their decision by the state water boards. The state water board said, no, you're responsible for everything that comes into your drainage system. Whether you own the property or not, whether you have the money to fix the problems or not, and that's caused this enormous eruption in the state's stormwater program. We do have the responsibility to make sure that what's coming in from the federal lands doesn't pollute the lake, but we don't have the money to fix everything in the watershed. We have to conserve our service deliveries to political boundaries that taxpayers pay for.
So we will have a lot to talk about.
What you said.
Want to come back up?
I believe Mr. Roby's right, and we do have to start at the top. But unless we take care of what we can do, we're really in trouble. And I think we're going to have to work with the feds in their zones. We're also going to have to maintain our areas of influence that we can do, that we can actually take care of. And, you know, we can't do all of it. And I don't think that the federal government is willing to do all of theirs, what they really should do either. But if we point out, after we've taken care of what we can do, that they have faults that we need to desperately for you to take care of, then they're not going to be able to ignore us. Because we've done our homework, we've done what we could do in our boundaries. And also, I love the idea that we can say, okay, well, this much is ours, and now we need to influence the federal government with our 15,000 people. 15,000 people live near where this water is coming through. Over here, nobody lives. And we should be able to get a lot of influence that way. But I think all of us are right. But Betsy's got a super good point. Let's try to do what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne?
I attended a meeting a few years ago, and I cannot remember what it was called, but the Army Corps of Engineers was there, Kelly Cox was there, several of the supervisors were there. It was Mike Thompson was there, and we had the Army Corps of Engineers say, what do you want us to do for you? And we all sat there like, we didn't know. I mean, that's one of the really important things that we need to know, is we need to be able to tell people what we need, and we couldn't do it, which was, what an opportunity. And then the guy from the Army Corps of Engineers said, well, this is the kind of thing we can do. And he made suggestions, and one of the suggestions is he said, look, we can work with the Forest Service, we can work with BLM. We're the people that can go out there and say, no, 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 this is what you need to do. So I think that being able to frame the problem, as this gentleman said, and say, this is what we need, is really important, so that if somebody says, we'll give you something, we know what we want. So I think that's part of our job.
I'd just like to agree with what both of the last speakers said. Identifying the issues, identifying the problems is the first step in getting them fixed. And we all need to learn how to work together on this, because it's not, these things are not just restricted to one political boundary or another. And finally, I gotta tell you a little story real quick. Like, when I first got on LAFCo, I didn't know much about LAFCO or the kind of stuff we dealt with. And I went to one of these LAFCO conferences where they kind of educate you on the history and the purpose of LAFCO and the kind of things you do. And I had lunch with a bunch of folks there. It was one of these working lunches, and the people that I sat with were from Los Angeles. That's why I'm mentioning this, because LA was brought up and their drainage. LA has a unique kind of problem that we don't have, and I left that lunch thinking, thank God, I don't worry about that stuff. And that if we have any sense, we'll never get ourselves in this mess. What they've done down there is they have covered up their watershed. They covered it up with roads and buildings and even the creeks. They concreted all the creeks. You ever seen the creeks, the rivers that go through LA? They're all full of concrete with the old idea that you just shoot the water off into the ocean. Well, what did they do? They covered up their watershed. So you know what they were talking about, the kind of problems they have? They have problems with what they call saltwater intrusion, because the water doesn't get to soak down into the watershed and recharge it, and so salt water is coming in from the ocean and infiltrating their aquifers, and their wells are going salty, and they're trying to figure out what to do about that. Now there's a mess.
That's what we do.
Poor LA.
That's why we're here, Stacy.
Yeah, we like to do better. All right, are we ready to move on? Executive officers report?
Yeah, I've got a series of things. We'll just do a brief report on the fire service reviews. I want them to address them at the March 18th meeting. And it's been a while, and so we're kind of back on to them now. So,
Each individual,
all the fire districts.
collectively or
Collectively. And so that'll be on for the March 18th meeting. The policy, and I'll expect, probably during this process, as the chiefs will need to take a look at it again. We have a new chief in Lakeport, and we can see it. And there's some issues that they want specifically addressed. Prop 172 funding is one thing. And how can they make sure that their costs are being, that the costs of or new developments paying a fair share of the costs, I think is one issue that they're concerned about. Policy update. It's been 5 years since we adopted our policy, and Scott and I are going to go through the policies to update them per changes in the law in the last 5 years. I noticed that the Cortese Knox has gotten thicker, so there's probably some reasons that we need to update our policies again. Probably in that process, after that, we'll look and see if we need to update the bylaws. I don't think we do, but there could be a few changes, like with Brown Act and a few things. I know there's been some changes there. Public member recruitment, we have the public member term is coming up, not the alternate. So that's Suzanne's the alternate. Her term is not ending. 2 more years, and then the term for Ed's, the public member, is up. And so what I have to do is I have to do an advertisement, a 21-day notice in the paper, and send a copy to the districts and to the cities and the county, and go through that process, and then we'll go from there. So that's something that I'm going to need to put a notice in the paper, so if any of you see it, you'll know what it's about. The city selection committee is about to meet. One of the items is the city of Lakeport has another year on the public or the city member alternate. That's Mark's position. And then the mayor's select committee or city select committee will be appointing its folks. And so that would be Joyce and Stacy, but they need to meet to really officially appoint Joyce, because you have a 4-year term already. But nevertheless, that's going to happen. The 700 forms are due April 1st. Please file them with the county clerk, I guess.
John, does she send us those? I think she does.
Go online and fill them out.
Well, the best
Yeah, but I
thing is
think
to
she
go
does.
online and
Yeah.
print them out. Alternatively, you can give them to me, just easier, just to file them with the clerk, but you can. I just want an original signature. And I need to file that with the county anyway, so why don't you just give it to the county?
Yeah.
And and that's fine, and they'll get you copies. I coordinate with them over there. So make sure you do that by April 1st. Every time you pick up the Sacramento Bee, there's some article about the FPPC finding some things, over a little bit bigger things than 700 forms, but still. And that reminds me that Denise Lustolo will need to file a leaving office statement, just that you're aware that when you leave office, you need to file these forms. There's a 30-day timeline.
Joan, will you let her know that?
Yes, I
Thank you.
Yeah, and the meeting schedule for the calendar year, I sent that out to everyone, and you have a copy also in your packet, so we are all on notice. That's the meeting schedule. It's been posted online. The Clearlake MSR has been posted online also. Just for your information, it's quite a long thing, so hard copies are a good thing here. We're looking at the next meeting is completing a small annexation to the Caledonia County Water District. The admin has lost a staff person who did these things, so I've been working with Matt. And so we've got that glitch taken care of. And also I got a call from Anita Grant the other day, and I had talked to Mark Dellinger before. It's regarding CSA 16 and Clear Lake Oaks County Water District, and there's a potential that the two will, I don't want to use the word merge, but I suggested rather than a merger that CSA 16 be annexed into the, dissolved and annexed into the Clear Lake Oaks County Water District for water. And what's peculiar about this one is that CSA 16, the Paradise Cove, is all developed. There's a huge area behind it that's not developed. So that's a concern with out-of-area agreements, and because our policies won't allow that. So that was, and Anita agreed, she just was confirming to me. So that's going to come up. You know, these things move at a snail's pace. So, I mean, I've known about this one for about a year. So at least now I've got to call the council. So it's moving ahead, I guess.
I have a question. Paradise Cove, you talked about the property cost.
Yeah, on the lakeside, those are all developed.
Yeah, the lakside's all
whole
developed.
area to the north.
To the north, how many acres is that? Is that one big range?
It's one big area. Apparently, this guy wants to develop it.
Really?
There's a subdivision map act that's already been, a subdivision map.
Anybody know how many acres it is?
Recorded. I don't know what the acres are, no, it's over.
No, I don't.
Oh, it was, I recall being told,
Yeah.
it was a very large ranch that had cattle and hay and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we dealt with it.
Well, that's some
Not
issue that
just
we're
the
going
acres, but it's big.
Yeah, and I also suggested, or that we need to do some changes to spheres of influence that were to happen. So there's always been a problem with CSA 16. Remember, about 10 years ago, we had a dissolution request from one of the former supervisors in the area before Denise, and it got to a hearing here, and people didn't want to dissolve it. So I don't know.
I didn't want it.
I remember they all showed up at a lack of didn't want to do that.
Very good.
So that's just briefly an executive officer's report of things that are coming out, and there might be other things that come up. There's a staff workshop in April.
In Grass Valley, where I live.
Nice.
And one of the things we're going to do with the policy update is also look at revisit our application form. I just want to make it a little more on point, and so we'll doing some minor tweaking there.
John, didn't we do a municipal service review in the Clear Lake Oaks Water
Yes, we
District
did.
like last year or 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And there will be a sphere change that will be needed if they were to take over CSA 16. CSA 16, it cannot dissolve unless there's a successor agency appointed, and it would probably end up being, unless they want to use just well water and go on their own, but that, I don't think that's responsible. So that would have to go, that's going to have to go to LAFCo.
Betsy, you have a quick comment?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a question and comment. The sphere of influence, the Clear Lake Oaks County Water District, MSR, you have to read the 2008, 2009 grand jury report, because if you recall, the actual MSR was completely different than the actual reality of that district. And so when that MSR is updated, we need to fix the things that were not done right in the MSR to begin with. Drastic differences in.
Yeah, we had updated it since then.
Oh, have you?
It had been updated.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Yeah, the grand jury report is what led to this update.
And my question would be, if you have, would you then have a situation where Glen Haven and those folks are automatically included in that district boundary, or would that create an island outside the district boundary? I mean, what are the people in Glen Haven going to say about this? They don't need the Clear Lake Oaks Water District.
And that's a good question. I don't know.
So, I mean, that would be my concern.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know.
Okay.
Sometimes these, some agencies can do annexations of non-contiguous territory.
But don't the people who live there pay taxes have something to say about it?
But they pay rates. I don't think they have a tax allocation. But I don't know. All this stuff, I don't have the answers. Yeah.
Yeah. They pay for LAFCo. Everybody pays for LAFCO.
The CSA does as a part of the county share. The Clear Lake Oaks, they pay a share. Yeah, it's 30 in the county.
Everybody in the county pays a share through their property tax.
Some way or the other.
Yep.
Anything else, John?
No.
Question?
Yes, I have under fire service review. I would like to see some kind of a positive comment, or hopefully see one, in the fire service review regarding ambulance operation and the major impact that has on funding for fire departments and the emergency services that are provided.
Right, and that was the third thing that they wanted to know, that because these you have these international ambulance companies that come in and they want to provide service that compromises the ability of these districts to provide service. And they'll say, yes, we're going to provide service, but they'll only bring one ambulance in, whereas now there's 7.
There are 23, if we were to count them. I know how many are
20.
Fire services provide 23 ambulances in the county between the fire.
Right, there's, yeah, and that's a problem for local ambulance service. There's some that are grandfathered in, and some of the districts, they can't come in, but some of them they can.
This is really important to the fire districts now, because the funding issues are, without the growth in the county, you're not getting a lot of funding. And the ambulance operation is basically funding our department in Lakeport, and I think most other fire agencies.
Isn't it true that about 80% of the calls are medical?
No, it's higher than that. It's 90%.
Wow. Rather than fire. So it's really important that these local fire districts are getting paid for providing these emergency medical services.
I mean, the people are there, and they're qualified. They're paramedics, and they can take care of issues quickly in your home, and other kind of medical, calling out of bed, that sort of thing. They're there and available. If you go back to a private ambulance operations, we would have to cut personnel drastically.
I echo that also.
Some of us have been here long enough to remember the RELs, the lockout, when they left with an hour's notice. And
Oh, yeah.
that's when the fire services geared up and got where we are. Unfortunately, right now, I don't remember, Ed, do you know when the current ambulance ordinance was written?
Oh, geez. It
It
was
was
around
updated last year.
2000.
One of the challenges, and who would have known at the time, unfortunately, it is not written to exclude outside ones from being able to come in. I've done a little research on that. Humboldt County just turned down that application of an outside one, so I've asked Edith Grant to research that, and she informed me that our ambulance ordinance wasn't written that way. So it's a big deal. You're right. I want that included. I'm in the middle of that. I'm not on the ambulance committee. It's Jeff and Rob.
Are they looking at revising the ordinance?
Well, it's going to have to be revised. And then we just had the interim ordinance, which put plug in the dike. But those who are on the fire boards know all about this, and I've gotten in the middle of it whether I wanted to or not. Actually, I'm glad to be in the middle of it, because it's a big deal. And yes, it needs to be a big part of the fire service review.
Good.
Madam Chair,
Mike?
I have a question related to this issue.
Okay.
As I understand it, our local EMTs are the only ones, other than the hospitals, our local EMTs and the highway patrol are the only ones that can call for one of the air ambulances. So if that in fact is true, if one of these outside ambulance agencies can't call for an air ambulance, that should be in your report, I think, because that's a significant happening in this county.
That would be significant.
Have to look into it.
Okay. All right, commissioner reports. Anything anyone wants to report? You good? Jim?
We all know we're still in the middle of a drought, because yesterday we continued the emergency situation because of drought. We also continued the emergency from the December storm event. Now, how does that happen? We had a significant rain event in the middle of a drought that ended, we're still in the drought. But in the harbor of the village, we spent, $5 million to route the sewer route, and it worked. But the rain event still flooded areas in the harbor of the village. And so there are issues, and it has clogged creeks. And residents down there are very concerned. I've worked with the city about getting the inmate labor is now going to be available for communities again. There's the new sheriff has instituted that, and the conservation camp crews can do that. They can only do that in they can do it for private property, and I don't yet know if those creeks are private property or not. But I do know that one of the issues, one of the culverts had 11 basketballs stuck in it. Now that really caused a problem. Down here, you've got 11 basketballs out of those culverts, and the water starts flowing again. In this case, and it isn't it's not the no vegetation that's the problem, it's the trash that's the problem. And so, and yes, it's a city problem, but it's a county problem, and I represent part of the cities in my district, so I work with the city and with conservation folks and sheriff to see if we can get them there and get some work done. I've not yet been able to find out if that property is public or not. I'm kind of doubting it is, but we may be able to get around it. You might know it.
Well, there used to be a program, the county had a program using inmates, and it was through the Public Works Department. And there were issues about getting permission to get on private property and how you manage that. And they had it pretty well worked out. I don't remember all the details, but you could probably find out from Public Works.
Good. I'll get Scott or Lars to give me that. What I need to get forward to this.
What did you do with all the basketballs?
I don't know what he did with them. They may have floated on into the lake. I do not know. Or maybe the city has a whole bunch of basketballs available. I don't know.
I don't have a game. Anyone else? Do you have any correspondence?
None to report.
Okay, we will adjourn to LAFCo's next meeting, March 18th in Lakewood.